I want to congratulate my friends who have spoken before me. And I note that many brought up the Beatles. And the Beatles took me back to a time before I was born, which is 1966. And it is relevant. I'm glad the minister has interjected, which he did throughout the speeches today. And in 1966, there was a very interesting statistic the minister should listen to.
I'd like
in
1966, the Speaker would like to hear the relevance to the amendment.
Home ownership was at its peak in this country in 1966. It certainly does. And also, at that time, a certain Beatles said they were more popular than Jesus. Now, there's a certain Prime Minister who likes to think they're more popular than Jesus, but that's certainly not the case. Because that's the only way you can explain what is happening in this parliament, when we have this syllogism that occurs again and again, where the government gets up and says, here is a problem, here is a crisis. Now, the word crisis can be overused, but it's not overused in housing. There is a genuine crisis in this country. And then you say, we must all do something about it. And then you present a bill where you've put more work into the title than the actual contents of the bill and say, well, here's something, let's do that. And let's read the title. It says, the Housing Australia Future Fund Bill. A bill to establish in the Housing Australia Future Fund and for other purposes. And for other purposes. And that is what the purpose is here. Houses are constructed with materials, with things that cost money, with tiles. But the only tiles that you've turned your mind to are social media tiles, because that's all this is really about. It's all it's really about. And we've heard in the answers to questions and in the speeches that are given on this, you've used certain arguments as a crutch. And I know my friend, the member for Spence, has interjected, and we are both the co-chairs of the Parliamentary Friends of Veterans. Now, veterans have been used in this argument as a crutch. And a crutch is a lazy tool, to back up a premise that you don't have, to back up a premise that doesn't make sense. And I want to go to veterans and housing, because that's where we got to the highest rate of home ownership under the Prime Ministership of Robert Menzies. Robert Menzies, during World War II, when Australians were fighting and dying overseas for this country, turned his mind to housing. He turned his mind to housing because he knew it was a fundamental thing to secure the prosperity and future of all Australians. And under his leadership and his government, home ownership in this country went from 46% in 1947 to 72% in 1966. And that was not just during a time when veterans came back and they weren't just offered a talking point, they were actually offered a home, an actual home of their own. He did that during some of the greatest migration booms in this country, where migrants from throughout the world came to this country and had a home of their own and a home for their children and their grandchildren. And there's many quotes that have been given to Robert Menzies during that time, but he talked about homes spiritual, homes human, and homes material. Now, when we talk about homes material, that sense of owning your own little bit of Australia, your own garden where you tend to your own vegetables, that means so much to Australians. When we talk about homes human, the idea of raising your own family in a home. And then home spiritual, the sense of freedom, self-reliance and responsibility that comes with your own home. These are powerful things that both sides of this chamber should agree on. They're not just Liberal values, but sadly it's only been Liberal governments that have instituted the policies that reinforce them. And that is a great shame. It is a great shame, because what Robert Menzies showed is that you can actually manage population growth and housing. You can manage that problem. And that's what we're talking here. We're talking about managing a problem, and right now you are not managing it. You are creating problems with a bill like this. It's not providing solutions. It's not looking after veterans. It's not looking after families. It's not looking after migrants. And that is your responsibility. And there is a housing crisis, because we should all agree on democratising prosperity. We should all agree on democratising home ownership. And part of that is democratising the Australian dream of owning your own bit of this country. That is something that we must all agree on, and it starts with doing something about it. And I hope that the minister does finally do something about it.
Thank the member for Menzies.